Okay. With that, Heather, take it away.
Thank you. Let me get this up on the screen. Um, Good morning. I am Heather Pasco. I am the System of Care Manager for the Marion Polk System of Care. I think I know most of you, though. I did prepare some slides to run through this, but I was telling Christy this morning, not super into formal presentations right now. So if you have questions and you want to stop me, totally happy to hear them and answer them. If you want to talk about something, we can totally pivot to that too.
Heather, your view's a little funny for us.
Are you seeing all the people?
No, we're seeing like two versions of the slide though, and it's not the presenter slide.
Okay, let
So
me
it's
try again. I've been trying to mess with the display on it because it always wants to display on the screen that I need to look at other things on. Okay, let's try this one.
all right. There
Is
you
that
go.
better?
That's great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So Click into the next slide. I'm not going to read through this slide, but just thought I would put it up here and give a little bit of background context. So leading into this grant cycle, the Marion Polk System of Care spent a year and a half really working on strategic planning and regrounding of System of Care members. It had become pretty apparent to us that not having a strategic plan for a number of years, and also just with the ebbs and flows of different members coming and going, and kind of the mix of having some members that are super long standing, like 10 to 15 years, and others that are brand new, that we just kind of needed to do a reset. So we worked with Portland State University to work through a strategic planning process, which really helped us to gather community feedback and also think within ourselves, how can we reground in system of care, mission, vision, values, principles, the whole 9 yards. So I don't think that the mission, vision, values here are probably anything profound or outside of what many of you have in your own systems of care, but it was really exciting to us to get to rewrite it in the voices of those who sit at the table now, and also taking into account the community voice that we engaged with through that process. Um, so as we did that, a number of things kind of stuck out to us. And one of them was that our current capacity does not keep up with, or can't really keep up with the strategic plan that we created. So we committed to a number of different goals, things like expanding system of care, increasing awareness. There were a number of projects the community really did want us to lean into. And like I said, it became very apparent very quickly that our 1 to 2 hours together per month was really not enough to create substantial work and move the needle on things that we committed to. We also know that in Marion Polk, we have struggled with youth and family engagement for quite a while now. Like many, I think that we can all relate to this. And we have had youth at one point in time, and we do have members that identify as both a parent or a caregiver, and then also a professional, which we love them, we hear them. But being able to really expand on that and truly center youth and families in a way that is meaningful and bring, new community voices into the fold was really important to us, especially in the revamping of those values and wanting to live those out and partner with the community in that way. And then another piece of this, or another thing that came out, was thinking about our structure and the way that it's often depicted in that. I know that there's a variety of ways to talk about the practice level work group, the advisory committee, and the executive council. And the way that we've often graphically shown it, at least in this region, is kind of hierarchical in nature. And not that those teams are meant to be that way. I think we all know that they're supposed to work in partnership with one another, and really think about being complements as opposed to one has more authority than the other. But really wanting to create a graphic and a structure that kind of indicated to the community that we want to flip power dynamics and things of that nature on their head. And we want to think about creating a structure that really works for the community and create places where system of care members and the new members that are being welcomed in can see themselves based on the focus of a specific team. And so while we haven't, we all know there's a contractual obligation, there are certain things we have to do. Those have been built into this structure, but we have renamed certain teams, and we have really tried to pivot our language into something that feels a little different and looks a little different. And then also think about, diversity, equity, inclusion work, but kind of through the lens of belonging. So that came up in our conversation as well. And being that I live in the Willamette Health Council in the Salem area, we have done, as an organization, we have done a lot of work with a belonging consultant out of Oakland. They're called the Empower Initiative, and I have them written in a little bit later, but there was a natural alignment that kind of came in the conversation that was happening through system of care to really think about this concept of belonging and how it goes with dismantling power dynamics and creating teams where everyone can see themselves in the space and that we're all equal partners. So with some of these realizations, we have redesigned our system of care. This is our new graphic to depict our structure and our different areas of focus. I like to think of things in metaphors and imagery because it helps me create concepts. And so I kind of, as silly as it is, I kind of looked at this as like the Earth's core and the different layers that ripple out. And so in the center, and I'll run through these teams, but in the center, we have our core teams that really set the vision and partner the most closely. And you can see that the corners are overlapped, showing that no team is supposed to have more power than another. It's really like we want these to be cohesive teams that interact with each other in a way that is free flowing and meaningful and hopefully makes folks feel like there's an equal partnership. I will throw out that obviously with contractual obligations and different places that resources sit, it can be really hard to dismantle all power dynamics and different influences that those create. So we're doing our best, but this is not necessarily, like, we don't believe this to be the end all be all. This is just our step in the right direction. On the outer circle, we kind of think about that as our action ring. So you'll notice that two pieces of that circle have matching colors to the core teams. And that means that that piece of the action is associated with the team that has the matching color. So community connection attaches to the youth and family leaders, and system of care strategy attaches to our administration team. And then the green piece of the outer circle is our barrier busting team, which is a fourth team that we have, but we think of them more in like an action oriented and like really focused on one thing way, which I'll get into. Let's check the chat. So first and foremost, well, maybe not foremost, but just first, is our system of care administration team. This is a team we've had for a while, and many of you, I'm sure, have them, where you work with your co-chairs to develop agendas and kind of serve as formal leadership. So this team is made up of a couple of us who work at the Willamette Health Council, which is myself, Laura Moran, who some of you may have met. She's our community engagement coordinator and leaning into youth engagement with me. And then our deputy director steps in as well. And then we also have our system of care champions, which are our chairs, but we have renamed them to champions in hopes that that will encourage, really stepping into that role of leading and accountability and all those things, which we have wonderful chairs. They already do that, but it's a more fun name. And then, like I said, this team is really responsible for serving as formal leaders and understanding both the contractual obligations and the will and desires of the community, and trying to help us, integrate those things together, and also make sure that the feel doesn't ever become we're checking boxes to do things. We want to move above and beyond that. And so this team really leans into that and just kind of acts as a checks and balances in that space. And then the team also monitors the completion of the strategic plan. So when we were thinking about how to put that those action steps and action plans associated with our strategic plan into action, We didn't really think anybody was going to volunteer to say, I would love to monitor the strategic plan. And so it seemed like a naturally cohesive place to put it, by having all of the champions lean in and help us. I do a lot of the back end work also in making sure that that stuff ends up on agendas. But yeah. How much FTE do we have to support this work? I am full-time, and then Laura dedicates a third of her time to system of care, so we've got 1.33. And then Josie, I don't know how you quantify her like the FTE in her position. I would say maybe like 0.1 or 0.15, because she is technically my supervisor and she oversees almost all of our program areas. So she's got like 4 or 5 programs that she oversees. So as we talked through each of these teams, I thought I'd throw in a couple of highlights about what they're currently doing, and hopefully we'll see some connection here from team to team. So for the system of care administrators, we continue to meet regularly and relationship build. We have the best champions. They are so fun to meet with, and they have such great ideas. We have Lisa Harnish with the Marion Polk Early Learning Hub and Karen Perkins with Marion County Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And then we are newly welcoming another champion for our barrier busting team, Claudia Rodriguez, also with the Marion Polk Early Learning Hub. So strong ties over there, but we have a lot of fun together, and they do a really great job of stepping in to facilitate and really owning the work and helping to engage partners. And I think that's really special. It sends a different message, and I think they really have a strong passion for it, it's very fun to watch them facilitate and engage with other partners, and just, I don't know, get to watch for a little bit instead of having to facilitate. And then last, we're working to strengthen the supports to ensure champions are set up for success. So as we welcome new champions in, really trying to have discussions about what is it that you need to be successful in the role that you take on. I was just having a conversation yesterday with one of our champions that sits a little bit further from the system of care work, and trying to figure out how do we keep you in the loop on a regular basis so that it's not like once a month you get asked to facilitate something that you may have gotten an email about 2 weeks ago, but you either forgot about, or you didn't have time to prep for, or whatever the reason is, being that most of us do live and breathe system of care, but some of us also have other things to track and or don't do system of care all the time. Next team is the System of Care Visioners team, which is essentially our executive council, but again, really trying to pivot that language and create, I don't know, just like a verbiage around system of care where we don't have expectations when we step into that space about what it's supposed to look like and feel like. When I hear executive council, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think that could be a little stiff or a little stale, or I don't know. It can also be a great thing, but it's got a mix of feelings. So we call these folks the visioners. They are our diverse local children, youth, and family serving partners. And then hopefully we'll also be youth and family leaders as well as we get those programs and teams up and running. They will essentially look at the big picture of system of care, so help set strategic plans and alignment with other programs. So that was another thing that came up like big time in our strategic planning, is that we really need to understand who else is in the community doing children, youth, and family focused work, understand what their strategic plans are and their goals are, and figure out how to better align and partner with those folks. I think it's funny over time as I get invited into different spaces, and I know many of us have talked about this, where I see a system of care member in a meeting that that's the first time I've attended that meeting, and I'm like, you knew about this the whole time and you didn't tell me. So trying to figure out how to, track some overlapping membership in that way too. And this team will also help assist with barrier busting. So kind of like the typical trajectory of a barrier. If the barrier busting team gets stuck, they can enlist this team to help with brainstorming and resources and whatever else this group may be able to offer at that time. And then, like I said, maintain the big picture. What systems participate in the Visioners team? Good question. I should have pulled up the team breakdown, but we just pivoted our existing membership into these different teams. And I'm going to try to remember some off the top of my head while this sheet pulls up. But we have we have Department of Human Services, Salem Kaiser School District. Oh, here's my list. Okay, this is going to be good. I forget every time somebody asks me, and I talk to these people all the time.
Sorry, Heather.
Hilarious. Okay, so we officially have Boys and Girls Club, Catholic Community Services, Center for Hope and Safety. We have Central School District and Salem Kaiser. Cone of Consulting, Mano a Mano, the Early Learning Hub, both Marion County and Polk County Health and Human Services and their Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities departments. Pacific Source, Punks with Purpose, Trillium Family Services, the ESD or the Education Service District over here, so Willamette Education Service District, and Yamhill CCO. We've got Amanda, who we love, and then the Willamette Health Council. And partners are still working to identify other groups and organizations that we don't have at the table or haven't traditionally had at the table. So that is an ongoing conversation, and we're continuing to do recruitment around that.
Heather, can I ask a question here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for your Visioners team, love that, by the way. Do you limit how many people can participate on that council? For example, does it mimic maybe something like the SOCAC where there are so many seats for, you know, certain systems, or is it open?
Right now, I would say it's relatively open. We do have like a graphic map of which organizations fall under which category or like which sector, and our hope is to balance them out so that we don't have all behavioral health or all physical health or, you know, whatever sector we're talking about. But I would say it's relatively open. We're trying to really listen when a system of care member says, hey, this person or this organization hasn't been at the table, let's make sure to get them there. It's exciting that they engage and they want to bring their partners into the fold. So we're trying to just be like, okay, whatever. I think at some point when it becomes larger, because I think we do have we're probably looking at 15 or 16 partners right now. If it gets too large, we may have to cap it a little bit, but we also do have this meeting open to any of the organizations that are at the table. If they have additional staff that they want to attend the meeting and hear what's happening and have a voice in that, they're welcome to attend. It's just that there's a voting member for that organization, and they're the only ones that so like if you brought someone from your organization, you'd have to put your heads together to figure out what your vote would be, and then you would cast the vote for your organization.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this team officially kicks off. We did kind of like a soft kickoff last month, but it officially kicks off in well, next Tuesday. So that's right around the corner. And like I said, we are welcoming a variety of new members. So those listed here are, they're brand new members, but are folks that we've engaged with over time and are just really excited. They've either reached out to us or we've reached out to them. And we're very excited about that. And then this team will be really looking forward to launching new efforts in support of our strategic plan and our belonging action plan, which I will talk about that part later, but really getting these action steps into motion. There are a lot of things we've already started kind of behind the scenes in terms of strategic planning and rebranding our system of care, working on this expansion piece and the youth and family engagement, but really bringing more of the members into the fold on those projects and having them, you know, help figure out when certain parts of the action are going to take place and who wants to jump in where, and just see it kind of come to life. So that will be fun. Our next team is our system of care barrier busting team, which it will act kind of like our advisory and practice level. This is again, those diverse children, youth, and family serving partners. How we kind of differentiate between the visioners folks and the barrier busting team, being that there are some overlapping organizations, is that those that are recruited for the visioners team, we ask that they have a strong commitment to blending resources, whether that be funding or staff time or meeting space or just whatever they have to offer, but really being committed to that blended funding piece and kind of at the organizational level as opposed to just a singular person in case we see some turnover. And then in the barrier busting team, we ask that they have more of a specific skill and that they maybe like to look at data or they like to really dig into problems in a deep way and are committed to really carrying out the work of barrier busting, because we all know it can be hard and long, and some people really like to dig into those problems and some people really don't. And so really just making sure that folks have that passion and that collectively we have the skills that we need to be able to do that. Sorry, just catching up on the chat really quick. In terms of core responsibilities, this team really will be focused on barrier busting, so collecting those barrier submissions and digging into barriers and being the advocates, being the liaisons, and really being the carriers of those. So in the past, we would have taken a barrier from the advisory and practice level, and if we couldn't resolve it, we would pass it to the executive council and then pass it to the state. And we're looking at both revamping our barrier submission form and our barrier submission process, and kind of looking at this team really being the hub for barriers, where they will reach out to our visioners team and ask for support, but they still own the barrier. So it may like get passed to another meeting, but then it will get passed back before it gets sent to the state or anything else happens, so that there is a body that actively knows what's happening and can hold the, I guess, historical context of that barrier, so to speak, in one place. And then hoping that there will be folks in here that we can kind of mock a similar process to what you all do at the SOCAC, where you have an agency or a person assigned to a certain barrier, and they can kind of help to track that work and help to really be a subject matter expert, in which case they may be able to attend like a state agency standing committee meeting with me and help answer questions that typically I'm like, I don't know, that's such a good question. Let me take it back and then send you an answer. So trying to work through some of those common problems that we've seen in the past and move forward.
Heather, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I have so many questions. This is so
Yeah.
cool. Could you talk a little, you said on that last slide that that group is also tracking community data. And I'm
Yeah.
curious what specific data sources you're looking at.
That one is a TBD and to be developed. I really wanted them to spend some time looking at that system of care dashboard that you all have put together and think about what else in the community are we not tracking or don't have access to, and how do we, I don't know, I guess like what data points do we look at to think about the general wellness of children, youth, and families locally? What would we want to track over time and just like keep tabs on? And then where would we get that? So kind of a future development, but definitely something that I think we want to track.
Yeah, that's so cool, Heather. I'll drop the SOCAC data report as like maybe some potential indicators. And then also just want to offer that Cody Welty is now a full-time research analyst in service to the SOCAC and like definitely available to be a thought partner.
Yeah, I love
For
that.
those types of conversations. So happy to connect you if you're looking for some TA and wisdom there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think to that note, we would also like to track our own themes in the barriers that we collect too, and the things that we're hearing from our youth leaders and family leaders, being that we may not be able to get to every single barrier, but wanting to track over time, what do we hear time and time again, so that we can make sure to rise that up as a priority, even if it's not being named as one originally. So this team has their second meeting next Friday, which is very exciting. We have also welcomed a variety of new members into this space, and also added additional representation from some of the same organizations that we have on the Visioners. This group has pretty much all of the ones I named before, with the addition of Polk County Juvenile Department, Karandi, which is like a electronic health record type of organization. They do tracking of health record things. I'm not a very good explainer of what all these people do, but maybe you'll get the gist. We did add Punks with Purpose, who do kind of independent living skills and help youth who have experienced homelessness or houselessness. Church at the Park, Coniv Consulting, WVP Health Authority. We have Rise Services. And then, yeah, I think that's most of them. So exciting to have new members. They are so passionate about barriers. Everybody that attends that team, they are just amped up to do barriers, which I'm very excited about. But prior to launching fully into that, we are looking at reviewing and revamping our barrier submission form and resolution process. So our new champion has leaned in to help me develop some proposals around the form and the process, and we'll be bringing that to the next meeting to have our members look at and kind of figure out what will work for the group that we have and the way that they think and process and want to support. And then our fourth team, last but not least, is our System of Care Youth Leadership Team. So we actually do not have a family leadership team right now, but just a youth leadership team. This is a pilot for, engaging additional community voice and really trying to figure out what works best and how we do this. Again, I think we all know that it's really challenging to stand up these types of teams and keep them up and engaged. And at the Willamette Health Council, we are definitely, this is like the first time we've embarked on this. So many of us are learning right alongside the youth, which I think is a huge opportunity and poses a variety of challenges. But this team, we are asking for youth that are ages 14 to 25 that live in our region and have experience engaging in youth boards, councils, or just have general advocacy experience. So our scope is narrowed a little bit for the current moment, and that is really to ensure that this team is successful. So being that us as staff are learning, like I said, alongside the youth, we wanted to bring in some youth that had a little bit of experience with being on a board or a council, in hopes that they could kind of stick it out with us as we go through the ups and downs of trying to stand this up, and helping them step into leadership positions as well. So I think over time, probably sometime next year, we'll expand the scope to youth that may not have that experience with advocacy or the leadership skills, and try to figure out how to put in those supports that they might need to be successful in that space also. So core responsibilities of this team are to hold space for youth with lived expertise to share their experiences and priorities with each other and then other system of care members as well. So myself and Laura, and then other partners that kind of trickle in and out of the space depending on what discussion we're having. And then also to inform and lead system of care work while developing their leadership skills. And obviously that comes with as appropriate and as they feel is meaningful and as their interest allows. But we're really hoping in the next year to build a curriculum essentially of skill building opportunities based on what they want to learn and what types of skills they either have or don't have, to help build them into confident leaders that want to engage in other system of care teams and ensure that we are getting both that advocacy piece by the staff and system of care members that attend those meetings with youth, but also directly from the youth. So having them in as equal partners in other spaces. What does recruitment look like? This time around, because it is brand new, we reached out to some partners that we knew worked directly with youth and asked if they had youth that had some experience or youth that they could recommend to do something like this. Knowing that it's brand new, that we couldn't give them all the details, and that we really were looking to partner with the youth to build this out. Because outside of what I just shared, all of the details are TBD all of the time. So we just spent a lot of time having conversations about what you want it to look like. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? So we did do some outreach to a couple of different partners, and if I move to the next screen, you'll be able to see that. So we have partnered with CTech, our Career Technical Education Center. They have a wonderful behavioral health program, and they have both first year and second year students who are going through the behavioral health track to become, many of them want to become something in the clinical space, therapists, counselors, some want to be peer support specialists, others want to do community engagement work. And so we reached out to CTech to see if they might like this to be either like an internship opportunity or just to help us create an opportunity for those youth to advocate for what they hear about in their programs and what they're experiencing in their own communities and schools. And then on our end, that also helps with kind of a revolving door of youth. You know, they come in and they spend their school years with us, and then as they progress on, they can either sit on the system of care in another capacity if they like age out of the youth leadership space. But it also brings in new perspectives based on how you know, just how the graduation goes. So we currently have 4 CTech students. We have 2 second years and 2 first year students. And we've asked most of these organizations to bring them in at least 2s so that they have somebody that they know or someone that's connected to the same organization. So they have that kind of that peer mentorship or that peer partnership. Conif Consulting and Mano a Mano, I will get to them as well. They are 2 of our culturally specific community-based organization partners that we have actually contracted with to help us with some of this work and really engaging underserved, underrepresented communities and those that we have not typically heard from. So Conif Consulting is focused on the Russian Old Believer and Ukrainian communities. And then Mano a Mano is Latino specific. And these were partners that we have had in the past as well. Through strategic planning, we partnered with them once and are kind of continuing to work on that partnership build. Punks with Purpose, I don't know, I was having a random conversation with them one day and they were talking about how many youth they had that were so excited to make impacts in the community and where could they go and where could they connect to. And it was kind of a natural connection, and we had wanted Punks with Purpose to be on system of care anyway. So they have brought in, I think like 3 or 4 youth as well. And then the Interface Network and Eli program, I don't actually know how to explain what that organization does, but I believe they are Latino specific also, but they do like, I think they do leadership skills with youth and have like different development programs. And so they have partnered with us as well. And there's one youth that's from that program. And with these partnerships that we create, we ask that they have a support staff that sits in the youth leadership team meeting with us. So right now it's kind of a mix between like half support staff and half youth. And again, that's really because we don't necessarily have all of the skills to you know, support a youth that maybe is currently going through something traumatic and also wants to share about it. And we want to make sure that as we open these conversations around barriers and different experiences, that there's somebody that they know and trust to lean on in that space, as opposed to them having to you know, private message a complete stranger and say, I'm having a hard time, and we don't know them, they don't know us, and we're trying to do something while we're facilitating. So it's also fun to have those partners at the table, and they help to encourage the voices of those youth that they engage with. Also, they know how to do that, and that's pretty cool. And then currently, we are continuing to meet regularly. We had our second meeting last night, and we are working to develop a list of local barriers or priorities that youth want to lean into. So really just kind of jotting them down on a list for now, and then we're going to circle back to kind of what themes did we pull out of what's being shared and what do they want to prioritize, and then also a list of skill building opportunities that we can line up in 2025 for them. Okay. Culturally but specific community-based partnerships. Okay, where do I go with this one? So this, like I said, this was one that came out of strategic planning, was leaning into some diversity, equity, inclusion training and learnings, and just the engagement piece that's associated with that, as well as belonging. And part of working in this space was acknowledging that we don't have the voices of all of the communities that make up the Marion-Polk region, and we still don't. This is one small step in the right direction, but I'm very excited about it. And so we had 3 culturally specific partners that we had contracts with through the strategic planning process. And that was Mano a Mano, Conniff Consulting, and then the Oregon Marshallese Community Association. And they were really great partners in helping us to get surveys and listening sessions and just general engagement of youth and families in their communities together so that we could make sure that we were hearing from them and including that in the way that we move system of care forward. They were also really excellent partners in giving us feedback around what worked well for their community and what did not. And I was really inspired by that because it was really special that they took the time to tell us, you know, the survey that you created, while wonderful, did not translate well and did not talk about youth and families in a way that our community relates to. And that just made a lot of sense to me and was like a light bulb moment, like, oh, wow, yeah, I think we probably need some help here because I don't know how to draft materials in that way. And so in the continuation of trying to build on the engagement of these communities and develop this expansion of system of care and different teams where everyone can belong, it just made sense to partner with them again and continue to be provided with feedback and work on our engagement strategies and just continue to learn and develop together. And so with some of the grant money, each community partner has been provided with $25,000 out of grant funds and $25,000 that's matched by the Willamette Health Council for a $50,000 grant, or $50,000 contract for this scope of work that I have outlined here. So it's not really based on hours, it's basically based on project and just our partnership and working together. And there's obviously more details to this, but I just tried to make it a little bit more simple. So we've asked that they partner with us around engagement of youth and families from their communities. So that means bringing a youth or a family member from their community to our youth leadership team. And also helping us to figure out other ways to engage or other places where youth and families are currently meeting together and just building on that relationship, attending when we can or when we're welcome, and just learning about that together. A second piece of this is developing system of care materials that are culturally appropriate and relevant. So we spent a lot of time working on foundational documents like charters and handbooks and flyers. And as those are developed, we run them through a plain language consultant, but we also want to take the time to work with our partners to have them review them. And if they want to host a focus group with community members, have them read through it and help to modify the language to something that is relevant and appropriate and that they can see themselves in before we do the translation, so that as we get to that point, it's actually going to meet the mark. And then third is general feedback to system of care. So they all engage in the visioners team, the barrier busting team, and the youth leadership team. And just having them give us general feedback on how is the system of care doing in terms of partnership. What do you see going well? What do you not see going well? And in terms of bringing community members from the individual communities that they serve, what would we need to change for them to feel welcome and like they belong in this space before we kind of get to that point where we're actively recruiting and trying to do that. So these are our partners, which we've talked about. We are still working on our contract with the Oregon Marshallese Community Association, but fingers crossed that will be done in a week or so. They're just kind of running things through their board, and there's a couple extra steps for them. And then last, I know I'm at time, so I will rip through this, but this is our belonging consultant, the Empower Initiative. And like I said, the Willamette Health Council has engaged with them a number of times. So there were a group of organizations that brought them to town last year, I think. And they did this training that we did for the system of care with a different group of partners that was the introduction to belonging. And they really worked to develop shared language and learning around the concept of belonging, looking at, well, they have you run through a variety of activities, and one of them is a quadrant exercise where you look at who are the privileged, the powerful, the persecuted, and the prevented whether they're organizations or communities, and you just think about the different ways that there are interactions or not interactions between certain dynamics in the community. And I don't know, it's just very eye-opening, inspiring. I don't even know in words if I could really put the like the feel of it, but they're also just excellent facilitators and do a great job of making a welcoming space for everyone to learn, no matter where you're at in your journey around belonging and diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Many of us also attended a learning lab from the William Health Council. We attended a learning lab in Alabama earlier this year to learn about the civil rights movement and belonging in that space as well. So we've been kind of on this trajectory of learning as an organization. And all of these opportunities have been very immersive, which is super cool. So wanted to contract with them again. I was like, the system of care has to know about this belonging work, and they need to run through these exercises. They're so cool, and it's just such a different way to learn and understand things about the community together. So we struck up a contract with them and with these primary goals. So to develop shared language and learning around the concept of belonging so that everyone has the same starting place. Increase engagement and ownership of system of care through belonging principles and learnings. So kind of thinking about that common barrier that we all talk about, where it's really hard to engage a diverse community or a diverse set of organizations and have them all see themselves in the work that you're doing. So trying to work on that through this idea of belonging and how we make things relevant to everyone in the room. Learning more about belonging, how belonging impacts our community. So again, running through some of those activities. And then determining an action plan for building belonging into system of care operations, structure, and then the skills of the membership that sit at the table. And these are real pictures of our training. So that's pretty cool.
Heather, I have like so many questions. Sorry. Do you have like an example of what a potential action would be?
Yes. So we have kind of taken belonging in our own way in the system of care, because a lot of the activities really hone in on what they call the yellow quadrant, which are those that they're organizations and their communities that are, I think they're in the prevented category, meaning that they are prevented from getting resources, they are prevented from making connections, they are prevented from just about everything that they could need to thrive and exist and succeed and all of those things. And I don't know with exactly where we're at, that honing in on one specific community is exactly where we wanted to go. And so we tried to zoom it out a little bit. And so we've been thinking about, these continued partnerships with our culturally specific CBO partners. And if we zoom it out even further, one of the action steps that came out of it was thinking about the local partnership with like the SOCAC and understanding how we send barriers up and what that partnership looks like, being that there's a perceived power dynamic between having like, the state label of something and a local label. And if we are to gather community voice, especially from those that are underserved and underrepresented, how do we get that advocated for all the way to the state level in a way where our partnership feels really meaningful, and that we're providing the information that you need, and that you're understanding the issue from the community level and thinking about some reciprocal in that space. I don't know if that makes any sense. It probably is hard without the context. But there was that, and then I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. We're still in kind of the beginning stages of taking all the action suggestions and putting them into a timeline, but we're trying to create a 6 to 8 month timeline that aligns really well with our strategic plan so that it all becomes intertwined. And then we also have a continued discussion queued up for the Visioners team meeting next week around how do we continue to learn about belonging, like what is it that folks want to know more about, and then how do we begin to integrate our learnings into the build of this structure, because that's where we haven't created that firm tie yet, is we have these teams, but how do we make sure that everything we just learned is implemented and that we're all held accountable for creating those spaces and that sort of thing. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, that's great. I would love to see the action plan once you
yeah,
can kind of build that
I
out.
can even send you the notes that we have and you can see what was suggested.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So to accomplish these goals, we we did a variety of events, and then we've spent quite a lot of time with the Empower Initiative. So the really big things for system of care at large were these 3 events. So we started with a live listening session in August, which was where the Empower Initiative team came to the Marion Polk region, and they spent a day asking questions about what's going well in the community, what's not going well, what does system of care mean to you? And then we did an activity where, in regard to system of care and the community, based on the discussion we had had, what are things going well? What are improvements that could be made? What questions do you have? And then what red flags come to mind in terms of us moving forward? Which was very eye-opening actually to hear from system of care members what the questions still are after spending, a year strategic planning together and really like committing to this expansion. And I loved it. I mean, I loved knowing what the questions were and what improvements they thought we should continue to make so that we could inform our continued action forward. Following that, about 3 weeks later, we did our introduction to fostering belonging training, which was another all-day event where the Empower Initiative came to us, and they taught us some of that shared language around belonging. So what it means when we are doing saming, of certain groups where we pretend like we're all the same, or we other certain groups. So we say they're different than us, so we're not going to connect. And then they have a whole dictionaries worth of terms that they teach that are just very applicable to the work. And then they ran us through a variety of exercises. So this one that you see in the picture here was one of the exercises. It's very immersive and very cool. They put people into the different quadrants that they want you to learn about, and you do an activity based on the quadrant that you're in and the resources that you're given. But they don't tell you anything about this activity before you do it, and so you don't know what quadrant you're in, and you don't know what's going to happen next. And there were you could see a lot of light bulbs and lights or eyes lighting up when people realized what quadrant they were in and the way that that impacted them and how they felt in that experience. And then third, about a month later, we did a live workshop day, which was another full day activity where the Empower Initiative came to us, and we looked at building on a little bit of the language that we had developed in that training, and then we workshopped the red flags and improvements that folks had thrown out in that first live listening session based on what was learned in the second training, to create a little bit of a short timeline and some of those recommendations that Christy was just asking about around action steps. So they got broken up into different groups based on what the red flags were and who we thought had expertise or information into those red flags. And then they had to throw out 3 action steps or 3 milestones, so to speak, that they wanted to see hit. And then our admin team is working to fill in the blanks with the details of the steps in between to bring back as a proposal and have system of care members tell us which steps they feel they can step into and help us move forward. So that action plan is still in development. And then on the back end, we've also spent some time doing coaching calls and just spending time generally talking with the Empower Initiative. So part of this was that I really wanted to ensure that our leadership in system of care teams, so our champions, are well equipped to continue the work of belonging, and especially through the facilitation of teams and discussions. And so we've been talking on the back end about different ways that can be implemented. What else do we need to learn to ensure that the leaders are able to hold the team accountable, but then also think about that in reverse, and what is it that the team wants to learn so that the facilitators and the rest of us can be held accountable too. So that's kind of a whole group effort. And I think that's all I have. That was a lot talking. So if you have questions, let me know.
Heather, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
So many, yeah, I'm burning with lots of ideas and questions, but would love to hear kind of questions from the group, what's resonated. Are there pieces of this you're like, how could I bring that to my local system?
I have a question. Heather, you've talked about the strategic planning process. What you said you did that through Portland State, is that correct? Can
Yeah.
you speak a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, so we worked with Portland State University, the System of Care Institute. So many of you know Brooke Reiser. We have worked with her before on other things in system of care, and she was available and willing to help us with a strategic plan. Our members can sometimes they like the bond that they create with existing partners. So we were very excited to welcome her back, and she spent a long time with us planning different workshops that were both that included both system of care members and community partners. So we tried to fill in all of those gaps in our system of care representation where we didn't have a formal member. So like all of those sectors that were not represented prior to now, or even maybe are still empty. We tried to make sure that we at least have one representative of that sector in each of those meetings. And we went through like a SWOT analysis and different conversations about strengths and weaknesses and different potential. I think we did like the SWOT analysis, and then we kind of dove into each of the categories in a separate workshop to really work toward developing action steps and then ultimately a plan that the system of care could commit to. In these different workshops, we tried to cut them into like 2-hour increments just because that's a lot of talking and a lot of like diving into community context. But it was really cool to watch the conversations add upon themselves, and our community partners really grasp the concept of system of care and just general community improvement around children, youth, and families like so hard. They had the best ideas, and even not knowing exactly what our system of care was locally and what we were doing, they had such great ideas around how to improve awareness and how to bring in new partners. And just in looking at the materials that we had developed, they had really great suggestions. And then, like I said, there were other projects and like specific topics they wanted us to lean into that arguably we didn't really have the capacity at the moment to take on, but are really hopeful that as we build out these teams that we will have that capacity. So either the next time around or as some room opens up, we can revisit those and add them in as projects and priorities. Again, balancing that with our youth leaders also who are actively spending their time with us too. But yeah, and then in between each of the workshops, we really had to be intentional about taking time with system of care members in our meetings to make sure that it reflected something that they could see themselves in, and that they were committed to, okay, this is our next step, this is where we're headed. Are you okay with this direction? Does this align with what you understand system of care to be? And are you committed to moving this forward? Because I think that was one of the struggles in leading into into strategic planning, and something we really wanted to prioritize was improvement of like the engagement of both current system of care members, and then also kind of socializing our other partners around system of care and saying like, hey, you're part of our workshop, do you want to stick with us? Do you want to hang around? Do you want to help us? And many of them said yes, or they said, I don't have the capacity to attend the meetings all the time, but if you start on X project, count me in. And so we have like this kind of outer network also of folks that don't attend the meeting all the time, but want to be kept up to speed and engage with us. So that was a lot of words to answer one question, but
it's so helpful. I don't have words to explain how much. I'm just like taking notes for how we can duplicate this in Lane County. So thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
Corinne.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just talked this all through, Heather. So I'm like, I mean, I just kind of want you to talk more about it, I guess. It's just like, because like the engagement piece is definitely the hardest part, is like convincing people that this is worth their time. And yeah, so I guess like a question that I still have is like, especially because you're from a region where there's been, like our region, lots of evolutions of system of care, where there's been people who are like, oh, well, I've been in system of care before. And you're like, yeah, but this is going to be different. And so like,
Yeah.
I guess, at what point did you feel like, okay, this is resonating? I can feel that they're getting tied in. Like, can you just speak a little bit more to how you were able to convince people to come to the table, that it was worth their time? And like,
Yeah.
at what point did you really feel like, okay, they're clicked in, they're engaged? I think it was this particular thing that
Yeah.
got them there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that happened in waves and like phases. With the system of care members that were existing prior to strategic planning before we engaged anybody else, I think it was the foundation setting all over again. It was running through the philosophy and the values, and then spending an ample amount of time revamping our mission, vision, and values and asking them how they would word it. And we went through 3 to 4 iterations of all of that. And I know wordsmithing is not very fun, but we take an approach in our system of care where system of care members lend their feedback, their opinions, their suggestions. We note them all, and we don't do like wordsmithing in real time. We say we want all of your opinions, your feedback. We want to know what the general feel of the group is, like which direction you want to head. And then our administrative team puts all of that together in a little package, and then we bring it back and say, here's what we've got. Does this reflect the conversation that we had? Yes or no? If it's no, let's talk about it. Let's go back and try again. And I think it's that active practice and like trust building exercise, so to speak, of we ask you, we hear you, we go back and do a little bit of work, and then we bring it back to you and say, is this the correct? Did we capture what you said? And again, being really understanding and open to, if no, okay, well then we'll take another month, we'll put it together, we'll repackage it and bring it back to you again. And we do that with like a lot of the projects that we do. And I recognize that that does put some additional pressure on like champions or chairs, and like they have to want to do that work and own that. I know that not everybody has that same opportunity to really say like, hey, can you lean in here? But you may be able to recruit others from your councils and committees that are willing to lean into a specific project and help create those proposals. And it kind of helps you get around the issue of like, you know, when you group thinking is really helpful, but to a certain point, and then you really got to be able to move forward. And so having someone active, like I think we actually said at the beginning, we said that we want to hear your feedback, your thoughts, we want to capture them, and we promise to listen. And we kind of reserve the right as the hosting organization to take your thoughts, put them into a proposal, and bring them back to you. And if we can't come to an agreement, then the Willamette Health Council and the co-chairs will make a decision on like in the best interest of system of care, because sometimes there is that like analysis paralysis thing, and somebody's got to be able to make a decision. And I would say we've had like zero feedback on or like pushback on that. Like they are happy to have someone that takes that on. And really, since saying that out loud, we have not had that issue. Like we do fist to 5 sometimes, or we do like thumbs up or voting, and pretty much everybody's on board all the time. As for other organizations through the strategic planning process, I think again, it was engaging them in workshops and saying, what from your role in your organization, what is your perspective on this? We want to hear it. We want to value it. And then we built it into our ongoing plan and made sure that it was reflected in our notes. And we sent all of those back out and said, this is what we captured from you participating. Is this correct? And then would invite those same people and more back to the next workshop and the next one and the next one, and continue to practice that kind of rapport building of what you say we will act on. We're not just going to take your words and waste your time. So at the end of that, we did have a number of people that said, we want to be on your committees when you're ready to recruit more people, keep us in the loop. We see them in the community and they'll ask about what system of care is doing. And yeah, I think it was just inviting them into the fold and giving them the time to learn and provide feedback. And some of them, you know, are still learning what system of care is, but they seem to have the buy-in. I mean, they show up and they're excited, and that's kind of all we can ask. So
I love that. Thank you. I feel like I was like putting my own notes in the chat of like things you said that I was like, okay, these are the things that I'm like fleshing out, which is just like, there are those two different types of people, which are like the questioners, the like existential questioners that are like, what is the meaning of this? And then there's like the decision makers who are like, I need to know, like, are we moving forward with this? This is what I want to do. Come with me. And
Yeah.
so I think it's like figuring out those strengths and then putting people in or like asking, like you said, like asking people if they're the questioners, if they want to spend a lot of time on that kind of wordsmithing stuff, it's like, then they can be a chair, they can be in an admin space, they can have that extra time to make those decisions in the way that feels comfortable to them. So yeah, I really appreciate you illustrating that and like yeah, that whole point about like, do you really need 100% of their like of their thoughts? Like when you're, like you said, like wordsmithing, you don't need to wordsmith in real time. It's like that can be something you experienced with them, you've been working with them for years. So it's like, at this point, here's what I think you guys want to see, and then share it back with them. Is this correct? And give them that opportunity to make a decision. Great work.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I will say, I don't want anybody to think it's rainbows and butterflies all of the time. I mean, we've made some really good progress, but they have been very clear that they, like in this expansion, they love the idea of this action and they want to see the action. Like they're bought into the process, but if it doesn't come to fruition, like, you know, there's going to be some like trauma that bubbles up of other iterations where people said, but this is going to be different, and then it didn't work. And so I really appreciate their transparency in saying, like, I'm bought in and you have to show us the action, and they know that there's their own part in that as well. But it can be a scary process, especially when it feels like sometimes you're putting your own relationship with all of these organizations and this group on the line to try to make some change. But I think they're very excited, and they have been really bought in. So I think also creating different team opportunities where folks can engage in ways that really speak to them and speak to the skills that they have. And kind of shifting the lens that way has also helped, because there are people that really just want to bury your bus. They don't necessarily want to strategic plan or like, you know, do different data dives or whatever. And so it gives them the opportunity to really focus on what part of system of care they feel they can be helpful on and they have passion in.
All
I
right.
was trying to find a rainbows
Oh.
and butterflies meme. So, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Heather. That's like so well said.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question or comment. Anybody want to share anything else before we open it up for just general questions about grants?
I just wanted to say I was excited the whole time and was super stoked when Corinne chimed in, because she's my system of care. Well, I guess you're not actually the coordinator anymore, but she's always been my system of care person. And I'm like, yeah, I want this for us. This is awesome. So really stoked, Corinne. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being excited with me. It is fun to finally really be able to share something tangible and see that there's other excitement. I mean, I know it's something a little different, and it's a different way of looking at the structure. And so there have been questions along the way, like, are we still doing it right? But we've really tried to lean in heavily around creating a structure that is really unique to our community and that speaks to them. And I think it does. So it's exciting and it's scary and it's going to be great. So yeah.
Yeah, but I love just like trusting the process, right? Like if you lay the foundation strongly enough, which is what you're doing, then like the rest of it is going to flourish. You know, if you think about it from like a house analogy. I also love thinking about analogies, right? Yeah, just super excited to see how this continues to like, you know, improve outcomes for Marion and Polk specifically. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Heather. It was so great. I
Yeah.
think everyone would love to see the slides. So if you don't mind sending those to me, and I can send those out to the group along with the recording.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, there's one more question. Corinne, I think I missed this, but curious about your capacity for it. Corinne, are you talking about FTE?
Yeah, because I was late, so
Mhm.
I think that Heather, you might have already covered it. But yeah, because obviously, I mean, it's a lot of work. So like, and I think like this is a big transition, but what does the capacity for this work look like from your perspective and like including FTE and everything?
Yeah, this is a lot of moving pieces, and I would be lying if I said I didn't have multiple moments in developing this concept and thinking about proposing it to system of care that I didn't pause and say, can I physically do this? Because it expands, our system of care from 2 teams to 4. And it's just a lot of moving pieces, and the bodies of work are going to grow. Right now, we have me full-time, and then we have one community engagement coordinator who dedicates 1/3 of her time. And then our deputy director, who's my supervisor, she leans in, I was guessing probably like 0.1 or 0.15. I mean, she mostly delegates to us, but like is a thought partner and definitely will help support us in moving things forward if we need it. So I would say ultimately, or realistically, we're probably looking at 1.33 in terms of FTE. That being said, I am advocating for an additional support. Thank you, Chris, for being a good thought partner to me around that. So I have my fingers crossed that there might be money in the budget to provide another support really around youth and family engagement in particular, because that's like its own body of work. And I don't know that I necessarily have the skills to do all of that on my own. And so really hoping for that. And then also someone to help with barriers and tracking and making sure that they're, touching all of the different teams, and that what's being said in a youth and family space is being translated and sent into the other teams. And so kind of having a lot of support around those 2 things, and then still thinking about what else I might need some support in. But I think personally it takes at a minimum 2 people. If I had more, that would be great, but small
really
steps.
helpful.
Chris
Yeah.
is giving me that look like that's gonna be a few years.
You need all the people. Yes. I am holding good thoughts that you will get extra help.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm holding good thoughts that you'll all get extra help. And those are opportunities to explore in the next round of CCO contracts, y'all. So look forward to some discussions about how to bring an additional FTE to this work, because we know you all need it. All right, we've got about 10-15 minutes left. Would love to kind of answer any general questions you have about your grant, clarifications. If you have the question, I'm sure somebody else does too, so don't be shy. Or just anything else you want to share out about your grant. It's open time for you all.
Christy, can you speak to the email that you sent out regarding the potential for a change to an amendment versus, what would you even say, like a whole new grant application? Can you speak to that?
Totally. Yeah. So the grants committee has been starting to talk a little bit about the 25 to 27 funding cycle. SOCAC is assuming that we'll see kind of consistent, sustainable funding in the next biennium. So the current thought within the grants committee is that we would just offer continue your funding via an amendment. So we would just do an extension for time and money. And hopefully that would be easier for you. I think in process, what that would look like is we would say, hey, everybody, we're going to offer you more money. We're going to offer you more time. Please amend your implementation plan. So kind of that table that's built into your grant agreement that details like within these categories, this is what we're doing. This is how much we're spending on it. You would have opportunity to change or adjust those things if you wanted to. If you didn't want to make any changes, you wouldn't have to, but you would have an opportunity to say, oh, instead of this, we want to do this. You would submit that draft plan to SOCAC. Grants committee would review it. If we had concerns about anything, then maybe we would have conversation. But assuming it was all fine, then we would just process another amendment for the time and money. And hopefully it would be easier for everybody. So the grants committee is gonna be discussing that proposal at their next meeting. I don't have the date. It's like the 27th or 28th or something of October. We're gonna be discussing that proposal within the context of our racial equity worksheet, just to make sure that we're considering any kind of harms or ways to mitigate harm in that decision. So you're all welcome to join or listen in. If you're curious to kind of participate or listen into that conversation, we'd love to have you. But I'm hoping that we'll come to a decision here about how we're going to get that funding out to you by the end of the year. I still need to figure out with contracts in terms of timing. I'd love to get these things ready to roll out, even get the conversation started like early next year, right? So that we have kind of what we need to do to kind of, as soon as we have the budget out of the legislature, which would happen sometime next summer, we can get it moving along so you all don't have a gap in funding.
So just to make sure, thank you so much, Christy, just to make sure I understand, we could make changes to what we're doing with the funds. We're not necessarily stuck to what our current project is. Okay,
Correct.
awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, thank you so much. That's exciting, and thank you.
Yes, and I see Jennifer's question. If we extend the 23 to 25 grant to the end of December, when will the final report be due? So your current grants actually end December of 25. We gave you an extra 6 months there just so we didn't have any need to kind of amend for time. It's kind of annoying for everybody. So your grant ends December of 25. I think the hope, and then your report, I can't remember what your last report is. Is it July of next summer? Yeah, so I think assuming we continue quarterly reports, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to maybe adjust the reporting frequency. As someone who used to do reports, I know those quarterly reports come up very quickly. And we don't not a lot changes in those quarterly, every 3 months. So, if I'm curious what your thoughts would be on like doing like a 6-month reporting timeline, if that would kind of make it easier, if there's any, reasons we shouldn't do that. But yeah, I think we would figure out the reporting cadence when we did the amendment. And I saw some hearts around the 6-month reporting, so we'll definitely bring that to the grants committee for discussion. Speaking of reports, your next quarterly report is due end of the month, so we'll look forward to getting updates on what y'all been up to. So. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm happy to give you 10 minutes back of your Friday. Thank you all so much. Thanks again, Heather. That was really amazing. Our next learning collaborative next time we'll convene this space is in January. So if you have ideas on topics, if you are just like, I want to talk about our region because we're doing awesome things, like, please let me know. Would love to put a spotlight on the work that you're all doing. Yeah, otherwise, I'm sure I will see you all soon. I hope you all have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Bye, everybody.